Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host, Nick the Butler, author of A Saga on Home Video. One of the things we don't really look at very often in this series is non-English releases. But that really isn't a big deal oftentimes in the modern age, because when we're looking at DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, Blu-ray 3D, and so on, typically we can watch the movie in English, even if the market that it's being sold into isn't a majority English-speaking market, because it's just a matter of switching your audio settings, or at the very least your subtitle settings, when trying to watch the films. It's only when we start getting back into the era of things like VHS, Laserdisc, CED, Betamax, and so forth, that it really starts to be an issue, because if you wanted to watch, say, the Star Wars films in something other than English, you needed to have a dubbed or subtitled copy. Subtitled in a pinch, dubbed at least would give you voice acting, sometimes great, sometimes terrible, very much reminding you of the Neimoidians, right, about how you can't go down there, and everything. That stereotypical play that they used for Phantom Menace. But, you know, most of the time, it was sort of one or the other. Either subtitles or dubbing. Or, I guess the third option, you just watch in the original language and hope you catch some of what the English soundtrack said if you're not someone who speaks much English or any at all. Well, depending on where you are in the United States, you may have found yourself in the mid-1990s in an area where we were starting to see sort of that cultural understanding of the fact that some places have such a mixture of people who speak English and oftentimes Spanish, at least Latin American Spanish, as opposed to European Spanish, that a lot of times you needed signs or documentation to have not just an English version, but also Spanish, very much like you see sometimes in parts of Canada with English and French, right? Well, in the case of the Star Wars films as released in 1995, there was an option for Spanish-speaking Americans, or at least those who read Spanish more fluently than perhaps speaking English, or were trying to learn Spanish. I think about how in our schools, when I was in high school, and really you still see it now in times, one of the great ways to teach somebody a language is to play a popular movie that they know and have either the audio be in the language they're learning and the subtitles be in English, or the other way around, so they can see those two languages as they're both essentially trying to say the same thing in a familiar setting. So, anyway, if you're in a situation, mid-1990s, the THX Remastered Edition has just come out, and you want to watch the Star Wars films, but you primarily either speak or read Spanish, there was an option available for you that is still considered a U.S. release. It's just a U.S. release that was a little different than the mainstream one. This was a mainstream, full-screen, THX Remastered, full-screen edition, as I said, in the U.S. I emphasize full screen because when it came to widescreen, it was those bigger packages, and there were those two different variants, right? The shoebox style and the side loader. This is the full screen version that we saw quite a while ago on the show, right? One of the more popular versions. A lot of times when people say they're going to watch the unaltered versions, they talk about watching this, even though this is the second time A New Hope had been remastered and the first time that Empire and Jedi had been remastered, but at least it's pre-special edition, right? 1995, based on the masters from the Definitive Collection Laserdiscs back in 1993. If you pop this into your VCR, if you even still have a VCR, you're going to be seeing the Star Wars films in their regular English soundtrack with no subtitles whatsoever. You can turn on closed caption, but no subtitles whatsoever. That was the only option that you had. So what if you were someone for whom Spanish was your preferred language? Well, thanks to a lucky eBay find, and I apologize, I forget who pointed me to this. It has been a long time ago. I think it may have been Sam Howard who pointed me to this one, but I can't say for certain. You could have gotten this. Now, if I cover up the little sticker here, it'd be easy to just assume this is the same thing we saw before, right? That this is the same thing that we saw as the regular English language version. Nothing on the top. Barcode and then proof of purchase on the bottom. The spine, Star Wars Trilogy in English, right? The three film names, THX Remastered stuff down at the bottom, still in English. Back, George Lucas's message, still in English, 20th Century Fox logo, Lucasfilm logo. The only thing really that stands out is when you look at the front. Okay, notice none of the other parts, but if you look at the front, which has the Vader face and Star Wars trilogy on it with the THX stuff at the bottom. There's that sticker there in yellow. It says Subtitulada, okay, which basically means what it sounds like, subtitled. Right? This is a Spanish subtitled set. The English audio is still completely intact. It's the equivalent, essentially, of putting it in on DVD and turning on Spanish subtitles, only in this case, essentially burned into the image as the only option for watching. You can't turn them off. It's VHS. Then each of the individual cassettes, exact same packaging, all English language, except Subtitulada on every single one. Always with that same sticker. I know, they rattle, they're VHS, what can I say? Then you actually take the cover off, and again, all the standard English US full screen release information in English. But there's your subtitle notification. Okay, essentially taking up the entire spine label. And again, it's all in Spanish. What I find interesting is that the actual stickers are all dated 1992, which must have been when the stickers themselves were developed for use, at least that version of the sticker for use across home video releases, because of course it isn't until 3 years later that this product actually hit stores. In 1992, that was the year of the reissue of the previous brick and the widescreen first special letterbox collector's edition release in the US with the hologram cover. Not really a lot to say about this, only to say that it's another of these little niches within the home video market that oftentimes modern audiences don't tend to think about. I don't tend to collect it because typically I collect the English language releases. But if we're talking about an era prior to DVD, if you wanted to watch your films with either dubbing or subtitles in another language, you are looking at a completely separate release specific to your specific niche within the marketplace, not the standard one. So in the US, yes, there was a small niche within the home video releases from Fox Video that catered to those who spoke Spanish, or at least read Spanish, as the case may be. Thankfully, we're now past that point, so that these days, I mean, most of the time when you get a home video release, depending on what region of the world you pick it up from, you might as well have Rosetta Stone built into the thing, because holy crap, there's a lot of languages. But, what can I say? VHS, Laserdisc, CED, Betamax, bit of a simpler time, but at least a time in which there was sub-acknowledgement that not necessarily everyone in the United States speaks English, though that is certainly the vast majority. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.